Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, all in crypto here, and welcome back, guys, for what is going to be another jam-packed daily market update. If you're new around here, we drop one of these every single day around 1 p.m. UK time. We're a little bit later today, where we keep you guys up to date with the latest and greatest things happening in the crypto space, but also the broader markets. That's exactly what we intend to do on this smashing Sunday. We've got a lot of kind of miscellaneous crypto news to cover. The USA Today, which I believe is one of the largest media outlets in the United States and has a global reach, actually posted an article that says XRP is the smartest crypto to buy with $500 right now. We'll maybe take a little look at that. We're going to be looking at some Justin Sun news, which I think is a little bit interesting because Justin obviously launched Tron Incorporated. I think Tron as a cryptocurrency is actually going to do, it has done very well if you look at its performance relative to others during the past couple of years. And I think it's going to continue to do so. And that might be or have a lot to do with stablecoins. Obviously, they are, Tether prefers to issue on them. And the billions that Tether have been printing have been on the Tron network. There's a piece from CNBC about Ethereum turning 10. From scrappy experiment to Wall Street's invisible backbone. Very interesting. And then we'll look at the week ahead because we've just come off the back end of a pretty volatile week due to a lot of things taking place. Economic data, obviously non-farm and unemployment on Friday. We'll put the backdrop of the S&P chart on whilst we talk about this. That saw markets sell off. It saw the dollar sell off, and the dollar's been kind of leaning on risk with its rally at technical support. I'm interested to find out what happens here for the dollar. If it really starts to pick up and go in an uptrend, well, that's going to be a headwind for the markets. I would like it to break out of a channel that it's been in since 2008, and I think that would have monumental ramifications for risk markets. But to keep it simple, non-farm payroll saw the market sell off. Crypto is not going to escape that, I'm afraid, and didn't, but actually held up, and I think this is far more bullish than anything, very well against many stocks. Even altcoins were selling off less than the likes of Amazon or some of the others out there. You know, you can see Amazon down here, 8% down. I don't think really any of your altcoins saw that kind of sell-off, even the smaller ones. So there's a lot to be said there. It kind of confirms that the pullback that we're currently experiencing or the volatility in price has everything to do with things happening elsewhere, which is why we pay attention to them here. You had the Fed speech. After the interest rate decision, you had the President's Working Group crypto report, which I thought was better than expected from my end. You also had the likes of Paul Atkins announce Project Crypto. And I think right now people are just fatigued with the pullbacks. If you've been so our entry back into the crypto markets was literally here. It's all public, and we've been accumulating altcoins since. During a time period we believe altcoins have been in of accumulation. Phase one's how we look at it. We now think we've got that price appreciation or real price appreciation ahead of us. And they've done well so far. But there's been a lot of chop to contend with. There's been a lot of ups and downs. And I think people are fatigued, and I understand that. But please, please, please don't lose sight of just how impactful this technology truly is and some of the valuations it may get to as a result of that. And I think the way people are pricing cryptos is perhaps wrong. Bitcoin, you know, you could compare it to gold, you can do these sort of things, but we truly don't know how high and what valuations or some of the higher valuations that these kind of global utility tokens can get to that are going to literally enable this global internet of value. It's an interesting asset proposition. I mean, you've got companies out there that enable the remittance of information and data over the internet, and they are worth trillions. Look at Microsoft, for example, a $4 trillion company. How high can some of these cryptos get to? Well, Bitcoin's proven the equation in regards to getting to $1 trillion. Other altcoins will. We certainly think XRP's on that path. We'll talk about that in just a second. But they can go substantially further. So despite the kind of fatigue that many of you guys are feeling with the day-to-day price action and the things that we have to contend with, markets have had to contend with a lot, right, from sort of 2020 onwards. There's never been a better time to be a crypto investor, in my opinion. And people are going to look back at this moment in history as the boomers buying up cheap houses. We get cheap crypto. And I hate to use the terminology boomer. But back to the topic at hand, if you kind of look at the stock market, it really isn't in a bad state at all. These rallies are hated, whether it was markets rallying in the face of the fastest interest rate hikes in history and QT, and people not expecting that. Economists are generally wrong on what markets are going to do. Whether it's the S&P and what it's gone on to do, or Bitcoin on the back end of a Trump presidency, 60% of kind of professional, institutional financial people actually didn't vote for Trump, meaning that they didn't think that the stock market would do well under him, and the opposite is taking place, whether it's the recovery that we saw on the back end of the tariffs. And I think this recent small pullback on the back end of what we're now seeing with tariffs, I think gets erased just like the previous, providing there is no recession. I've already got the draws on here, or depression or catastrophe that takes place. And I don't envision there to be one. There's always going to be potential catalysts for that, but I think this small pullback recovers, and obviously crypto goes with it, and crypto's in an uptrend against the S&P. And when it comes to Bitcoin, I mean, it really is a beautiful picture. Not only if we just look at a kind of naked chart, but if we still in a very clear, strong uptrend that you expect continuation on the back end of, and we've got a lot of patterns giving us that continuation. I think Bitcoin's got a good chance of getting to 306,000 in the coming year or so. And I think maybe something like MicroStrategy could confirm that in regards to, we've got $900-ish targets for MicroStrategy based on a continuation pattern in its trend. I had been highlighting, and it's still in play somewhat, and I'll use a different chart, the smaller time frame flag that we could be getting here. It's very similar to what we saw with this flag that we were looking at. These are going to take you to around about the upper end of 130,000. And I think this continuation could play out. We've just got to see how this week, I think markets just had that reaction to bad news. At a time when people are looking for bad news to really be bad news. Sometimes in this kind of environment, bad news is almost good news. We saw a lot of double-edged swords with the non-farm payroll. It increases the probabilities of interest rate cuts. Well, that's a good thing, surely, for monetary creation, for taking the wind out of the dollar sales through the amount of dollars needed to service it being less. Lower interest rates, you need less dollars to service it. But at the same time, the reason that they might be coming down is because of an economic slowdown, which is going to have negative repercussions, certainly with unemployment being correlated with the S&P. It's a lot of double-edged swords, but this is why we're technical analysts, because I believe you're not going to have a bloody clue what's going to happen with the markets if you just follow news headlines. I don't think you're going to be able to accurately do that, because they're often contrary or counter to what's actually happening. So the big picture for Bitcoin, the big picture for the stock market, we still think looks great. I think this could still potentially result in a flag, and you get that continuation out. Obviously, this target is now changed with the flag base being down here. So these are actually giving you confluence in regards to now 136,000. And we're saying that at a time when people are pretty bearish. I think Bitcoin's next move is 136,000. That is going to align with the broader technical targets that we have for it. And fundamentally, things going on. I mean, Paul Atkins, chair of the SEC, literally said he wants to bring or allow people to bring markets on chain and evolve our financial systems and services. That happens on public distributed ledgers, in my opinion. I mean, this is huge, huge stuff. So enough of the technical stuff. Hopefully that's put some of your minds at ease. We have a duty here to essentially, I think, help people in regards to tackling these markets. Obviously, we're not financial advisors. We're not qualified to do so. And crypto is risky, but, and there's no but there, it really offers one of the greatest opportunities I think you'll potentially see in your lifetime. I mean, I can't speak for what's going to happen in the future, but certainly one of the greatest opportunities right now. And you need to be able to understand that it's volatile inherently and deal with it. And watching this channel, if I think there's a reason for me to be cause for concerns from a price point of view, it's going to pay me to come out and say that, rather than to just everything's fine, even if it wasn't. That's not who I am as a person. If there was an issue, we'd tell you. We don't see an issue. But that is just my opinion. This was an interesting post from USA Today. XRP is the smartest cryptocurrency to buy with $500 right now. The comment section on this is hilarious. you can see the Bitcoin maxis out in force. People still call XRP a scam, which is hilarious. And if you're one of those people that's calling XRP a scam, and undoubtedly some people will think that follow this channel regularly and watch these daily market updates, because we're not just a one coin maxi. We think the space as a whole is going to innovate the world, and there's going to be multiple winners in that. Please go and do some looking into the fact that Ripple literally has partnered with some of the largest banks in the world. And many of them, and Ripple XRP has been mentioned by DTCC, the BIS, the IMF. It's documented so many times, Central Bank of France, I can go on and on and on. These people have to do a lot of due diligence to be releasing these reports or even looking into something in the first place. And I think XRP is going to do sensationally well. I think there's a darker horse than XRP that's essentially doing the same thing, but that we also talk about. So this was an interesting article. Max is out in force. I think Bitcoin's very separate from the rest of the space and holy, if you will. But there's lots of crypto doing lots of things, and this is what they're talking about. Long-term growth potential, talks about its sort of real-world usage and utility and relates it to the Genius Act and so on and so forth. Just in sum, interesting character, very interesting character. He's live right now in space on Blue. I don't know quite the whole thing here. Blue Origin. Is this Jeff Bezos' thing? Potentially. We saw others do it as well. Tron's an interesting one. I think Justin's one of the chosen, and thus Tron, the blockchain, they've got bigger plans for it. Interesting article from CNBC is what I mean by the miscellaneous news. Ethereum turns 10 from scrappy experiment to Wall Street's invincible backbone. Peter Thiel was one of the initial, he certainly gave Vitalik Buterin a grant, and then he went on to found Ethereum. It talks about 10 years after launch, Ethereum has evolved from scrappy experiment to the hidden infrastructure powering Wall Street's next generation of finance. Major institutions from BlackRock to Robinhood are building directly on Ethereum's rails, cementing its role as the backbone for stablecoins, tokenized stocks, and instant global payments. Co-founder Vitalik Buterin says the biggest distribution won't come with fanfare. It will quietly reshape money itself as Ethereum scales to billions of users. We're not rooting for Ethereum. I just think there's more impressive technologies, but Ethereum certainly has the network effect thus far. And sometimes with these larger institutions, they want things that have been sort of running. They'll go for the safer thing, even if it's slow. It's not always the best technology that wins, but I do think there's going to be multiple ones. It can't all just take place on Ethereum. So we came off the back end of a very volatile week. Let's talk about the one we got ahead for us. It's a lot more chill. We do have a lot of company earnings. Monday, really nothing. Tuesday's probably big one is the US ISM servicing PMIs. Wednesday is not really a lot going on. Thursday is going to be interesting for us here in the UK. BOE rate decisions, rates expected to be cut to 4%. Bit of good news there, I guess, although the gilts market in the UK is a mess. And they can't blame Liz Truss for that. I don't think she was to blame for the first time round, even though she literally got scapegoated. And I think unfair. I think she'll come back around in a big way. And so will her policy, certainly given the way that they're pushing it so far to one way at the moment. So not a huge amount of data going on this week. You do still have a lot of company earnings. You've got the likes of Palantir, Snapchat, Supermicro Computer, Shopify, Uber, Walt Disney, Airbnb, so on and so forth. So it could be an interesting week as far as that's concerned. Let's see how this week plays out from a market perspective. I actually think we're likely going to see a recovery. For me, I'm really going to be looking at the dollar and what that's doing. I'd like that to alleviate, but what I'd like to see is it continue to come down out of its recent rally, and actually the S&P to be going up. That's kind of, I don't want them both coming down together because that's a double negative. And certainly that continuation pattern in the form of a flag could be on for Bitcoin. Hang in there, guys. The future is bright. That's it from me. I'll see you all in the next one.